lately? It's Coons. What have y'all done for us lately? And if there's no answer, the only thing we owe them.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk 2. And tonight we have Professor Drea. Drea, most of the people see me always put up your videos on the channel as well. For those that don't know who Drea is, Drea, give us a brief introduction of yourself.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Professor Drea or Andrea. I'm a blogger, assistant professor, all things. But definitely a mental health advocate, especially for Black people, because we still look at it as a stigma and a taboo in our community. And you probably see me like on Q's channel sharing, wisdom and reminders for us to wake up and do better and be better. We already can look the part, but sometimes, Black does crack mentally, and we need to have conversations around that and have proaction to it as well.
Great. So let's have this discussion. So, it's been a while since you've been on, yeah.
I know.
I moved. Thankfully, I finally moved, got situated. I just got my office together. I still got about 5 or 6 boxes to unpack. But I finally moved as well and just trying to get things situated. So what's been going on with you?
So as you probably know or don't know, I moved on from my university and I'm at a new university. I took a career break. I'm still kind of on a semi-career break. And, I think we all need to have some type of break in our lives because life is tough. Life is life and for all of us. And I don't care how cute your profile picture is or all the dope words and videos you may say, how many vacations you take, you still have to live with yourself and come back to yourself. And if you're not okay, nothing else is okay. And so many times we forget about that. So, you have to get yourself straight first before doing other things.
Yeah. Before we even get into what we're going to talk about, I'm going to put up something and I want you to discuss it and talk about some of the things that you did for you.
Okay.
This phrase, strong Black woman, a lot of people love to use this as their motif, which is like a slogan. Mm-hmm. And they love to say, I'm a strong Black woman, I'm a strong Black woman, I'm a strong Black woman. And we know no other culture ever says this.
Right.
You never hear nobody say, I'm a strong Indian woman, I'm a strong Irish woman, I'm a strong Italian woman, I'm a strong Boricua woman, I'm a strong Dominican woman. We only hear that in Black American communities because what's up, Black Larian? We don't usually ever hear it anywhere else.
Right.
So let me ask you, how do you feel about that slogan and people, saying all the time that they're strong?
I denounce that word. I don't like using strong Black woman, and I hear that so many times, and I heard it so many times in my lifetime, especially with just women in my family. Like, oh, we come from strong Black women, so you don't got time to cry, you don't got time to be soft, you don't got time to let life fall apart. Like, you got to hold it together. And I feel like strong people, they do break eventually, and like you said, it's only designated for Black American women. So like I said, I denounce it because, we can be resilient. We can be other words besides strong. And when I think of strong, I think of like, we got to uphold everybody. We got to lift everybody up. And, but eventually you will break. I don't even like to say bend, you'll break because mentally you're carrying the burdens of other people on top of the generational trauma that you're experiencing, the things that you've been exposed to, whether it's violence, unmet needs of poverty, even going to reparations and all the promises we've been made. And, you're like, oh, but I'm strong. I'm going to get through that and I don't care. But your mental health is suffering at the same time. So I denounce that word. I don't use that word. And I tell people, like, please don't use that. And it's like we're saving people. Oh, here come the strong Black women. Saving democracy. I know I didn't mean to go there, but saving democracy, saving other people, and that's not.
Yes, Sister Star, you're correct. Saying you're a strong Black woman carries a masculine energy. Right. Now, let me give you guys in the chat a little bit of history about how Professor Drea and myself met. We met in the reparations space. Right. We met in the reparations space. She's our sister. She actually, right after I linked up with her, she actually took a mental break off of Twitter. She was real big into Twitter, into it strong, always on and supporting all the reparationists, and really advocate and a voice. Like she said, she's a professor. She used to be assistant professor at Tuskegee, which is her alma mater. Mm-hmm. So we met in the reparation space. So she took this break off of Twitter, and I'm like, yo, what happened? Where you at? Somebody, as people do, unfortunately, so many people troll. Mm-hmm. You had got a troll, and they wanted to troll your account, mm-hmm. and you took a break because sometimes it just be too much.
Absolutely.
Explain that initial break, and this was.
Oh, that was.
It's like 5 years ago, right?
That was 5 years ago, yeah. So I took the break, and I mean, my following was growing, and it was growing. And that's one thing, I know people be like, oh, you got to get your numbers up. And I was getting my numbers up. But at the same time, too, like, I had a lot of trolls because I was speaking truth to power. I believe in speaking truth to power. I don't, as far as with censoring myself, if truth is truth, I'm with the truth and with values and with morals. So when you start getting these trolls, and then you do have your supporters, because I have folks who did support me as well. And once it starts getting personal, you start getting doxxed. People start finding out where I was working at, sent letters to HR, and I had to do a lot of explaining to, my leadership at the time when I was at my other job. I was like, you know what, it's not worth it. Not saying that people ran me off. A lot of times it was affecting my mental health, and I was focusing more on, I got to get back at these folks on Twitter. And you're really just arguing with avatars. You don't know who's behind that screen. You don't know, the mindset of people, because once again, people's mental health are, unraveling. And that was in 2019. So I was like, let me just remove myself and find other ways to advocate for reparations for Black Americans. That's always been in my spirit, because when you are born in this skin, born in the States for generations after generations, you have no choice but to advocate. You can't hide from it. But some people rather not have those conversations because it's like, oh, it's going to ruin my brand power, or if you're trying to get sponsorships, right? So I just decided to take a break from Twitter, or what is it, X now, and I'm like, I ain't going back to that. It's like a
I was in my feelings like, yo, where you go? I'm like, yo, you guys in the chat, I was like a fanboy, like, yo, her page was popping. I'm like, yo, she just dipped off the face of the earth. I hit her up. We had a long conversation on the phone, and she's like, oh, I had to get up out of that piece. Yeah. And then you really see, and we were talking about this before we went live, like, yo, putting in the work, putting in the fight. We look at a lot of people, like I said about Malcolm and Martin, and you judge them from a lens like, yo, they didn't do enough. If I would have been in that position, no. You don't want to be in that position, because it'd be your own people.
Absolutely.
Like they say, all skin folk ain't kin folk. No, it's bigger than skin. It be people that literally know that what you're speaking is the truth. Maybe, they don't even realize it sometimes that they're being weaponized against you, what you're trying to do. So I wanted to have this discussion, Drea, and it does deal with mental wellness. And we all know right now the political climate is like super high. You're dealing with a lot, being that you have a Jamaican Indian candidate who her blackness has come into question, because those of us in the reparation space, those of us that understand lineage, we know when we say black, we know what black means. Black. It's not only just a quote unquote race or color, it's an ethnicity for us in America. So we see that it's a lot of emotion, a lot of tempers, a lot of mental stuff going on. Then you have, she's a woman. Now it's men versus women. Oh, y'all, because y'all ain't gonna vote for her, y'all ain't protecting the black queen. So it's a lot going on.
Right.
Then you got people that's dealing with the reality of their personal lives. The gas pump is kicking their ass. Groceries is high. Everything's high. They're struggling to just get by.
Right.
Talk about how this can really take a toll on your mental health. And
it definitely can take a toll on your mental health, especially if you're adding on more plight to your plate. Like, it could turn you against your significant other, your husband, whoever, if he wants to vote a certain way and you want to go a certain way. If you don't have, for real, like,
it's funny you said that, because I saw a poll the other day on IG, and it said, would you be able to be with somebody who votes differently? And it was amazing, and I'm not here to dog no sisters, but majority of the women was like, no. The men was like, yeah, like, that's her vote, that's my vote.
Right.
Majority of the women was like, no, because we're not equally yoked. So now you have to be yoked politically. Now the goalpost is always changing now, right?
Right. It's always changing. And from my understanding, yes, I come from a Christian background, like you being equally yoked when it comes to, scripturally, with your religion. And then, some people convert as well. So that's their own personal opinion. But when you vote in, that's private. Our ancestors didn't die for us to vote. Our ancestors died for us for many different things, to get educated. There's still a lot of us who are not educated at all, even to the level of, having a bachelor's or a master's degree. My significant other, whoever he want to vote for, that's on him. I'm still going to love him how he treats me, and we're going to rock together. And people are really losing it and unraveling. People that I know, and I come from an HBCU space. Even I'm seeing people, and I'm like, I better not see this when I go to any games. Are we gonna set up voter registration? Some of these kids can't even afford to stay in school. Some of these children are foster care children who are forever displaced and cannot go nowhere when it comes to break, right? So we got so many other issues going on, and you're focusing on this woman who didn't specifically say, hey, I am Black, right? She's been in videos with Mindy Kaling. I used to watch that show. She's an Indian woman, in which her brother put, in order for him to get admitted into medical school, he was African American and got admitted into medical school. But that's a whole nother topic of discussion. Yeah. And on top of that, you're dealing with folks who are misdiagnosed, undiagnosed, who have unmet needs. And our unmet needs are poverty. I don't care if you make it 6 figures. You still poverty. Because if you can't pay for your kid to go to school full time, like their full tuition, they got to get loans out, you are living in poverty. You got folks who are one paycheck, one emergency away from being homeless. Right, you got food deserts. You got food that's not even quality food.
Drea, I know the audience on this channel is very, very intelligent, but I need you to explain what a food desert is, because I had a conversation with somebody the other day about because I have an opportunity to finally have my garden, and that's a whole different thing, something that you had addressed to me before.
Right.
But explain what a food desert is.
So a food desert, the actual term is if you don't live in a distance within 1 to 2 mile radius of a grocery store, that's a food desert. How do I know that specifics? I was a director of a nonprofit, and I had to pretty much create food banks. So that's why you see food banks in place of grocery stores in certain areas, in marginalized areas, underserved areas, right? So if you live in a community, your community should have these things. Grocery stores, hospital, quality schools, and not Title I schools. So those schools are usually taken over by the government. Gas stations, you should have a lot of green space. Why you should have a lot of green space in the community you live in? Because that's less on your utility bill. People don't know about that. Also, too, your housing value, the value of your house. So food deserts is a big thing in our community. When I say our community, Black American communities. Then, too, you have people who are not going back to nature to garden. I garden. I come from a family full of farmers. I had a great uncle, had a stroke, 80-something years old, was still on his tractor at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I know what it's like to eat from, what they call it, from farm to, your plate. So, that's why I grow my own garden. So we have bigger things like that. We have people who's uninsured, unbanked. But we fighting over political stance, and this woman never said, hey, everyone's going to get universal health care. Jamaica has universal health care. How do I know? I studied abroad in Jamaica. And when I studied abroad in Jamaica, we're going to talk about the race too. They have universal health care. When I studied abroad in Jamaica, they have Chinese Jamaicans, they have Indian Jamaicans. Those the two main groups that I laid eyes on when I was studying abroad in Jamaica when I was getting my MSW. And so people have to, and people get race, nationality, ethnicity confused too. Those things are different. Just because someone may be presenting Black doesn't mean that they're Black, or they can straighten their hair, or because they got kinky hair, they just like me. We have different experiences when it comes to, United States of America.
So you guys in the chat, you see Drea's warrior spirit is coming out. She can't even handle how displeased she are with the amount of people debating on whether they should vote for this individual that's going to represent the party. And I don't want to make this show a political show, right, but it has a lot to do with you got so much going on in your personal life, and then to get online. A lot of people nowadays, they don't socialize like they used to, so they don't go to the park and be like, yo, let's go out, let's go have a cup of coffee. Some people might go turn up and drink or whatever, but most people are on their phone. They're getting that dopamine from the phone and the computer. So now you're taking on the energy of the election conversation.
Right. And you don't know, going back to, you don't know if that person is mentally ill that you're arguing with. So that's why I don't argue online. First and foremost, that's one of my rules. I don't argue online. I don't know if you're mentally ill, because a lot of people are mentally ill when it comes to our community. Our community, going to get the most attention online. And then guess what? Who's their audience is? Other mentally ill people. And a lot of times it's hereditary. A lot of times it's onset due to trauma. And our community face the most post-traumatic slave disorder and stress disorder. And also, let's say me and you, Q, we walk, we on social media, we can also get secondary trauma. Secondary trauma is when we constantly looking at trauma after trauma after trauma. We may not have directly been affected by it, but us witnessing it through our eyes and, reading it, seeing it, we can get traumatized by it. So hence why I don't look at violent things online. When people, I'm like, why y'all gotta post police brutality? And I think too, that's to activate, this unhealed spirit within us. And we do all this talking, we have a talkathon, and we're not creating any policies. We're not asking for policies. And then also too, we're passing on further trauma so we can trauma bond with each other.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, because 10 years ago, when everything happened in Ferguson, that's when I gave up watching the news. I may watch the news for like 10, 15 minutes, but I used to be a news watcher. I grew up a news watcher. My grandparents watched C-SPAN. Damn, that's how I like politics. My grandparents watched C-SPAN when I went there. But anyway, it used to be a thing in the news thing where a lot of people may not understand. It says it's called "It Bleeds, It Leads." So this is why in the news, the first thing they do is talk about violence, drama, crime, because unfortunately, this is what attracts people.
Right.
But then you have that mental drain of how the energy takes on a whole different form. So how have you noticed like the uptick? Because I know like you'll take a hiatus off of you guys in the chat. Drea is still on Instagram. She gave up Twitter altogether. She's still on Instagram. And I know that you have your project where you do online coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I know when stuff gets a little cuckoo, you'll take a little 30-day hiatus to reboot.
Right.
Have you noticed the uptick in emotion since the debate? Let's just say his debate, the Biden's last debate. That's when it really started.
I have.
That was July 21st.
Yes. The emotionalism and the sensationalism from people I went to college with. So we talk about, and I'm gonna have to go there, the talented team, the black bourgeoisie, because okay, I will be deemed on paper part of that crew. And then they, getting off on, oh yeah, but they all of a sudden became political scientists, and some of y'all went to school for engineering, business, don't even care about the black community, don't live in the black community, right? You only want to say that you black because you went to HBCU, or you want to come to homecoming and talk that talk. People who I've never seen post about anything political, won't even post anything about, hey, we need reparations, because they got comfortable because they're making their six figures. And here goes the emotionalism, and I'm blocking you and I'm blocking this. I'm like, I don't care. You can block me. You can do whatever, because at the end of the day, I know you. And see, people are now coming from behind the screen and they sunning people. People are getting tired of people being keyboard warriors. And like you said, people are so disconnected from reality. They in the Lululand because, and I know the Lululand, we make fun of that, but that's schizophrenia. People, a lot of our people are undiagnosed or diagnosed with schizophrenia. They don't live in the same reality as us. So if I see that type of episode of schizophrenia or psychosis, I'm not even going to argue with you, because you don't live in the same reality that I do, because you have distanced yourself from, being black, and you caping for someone who have locked up so many black people, some probably in your family, but they're caping for them because, oh, I got to go with this person because this person has showed that they're covertly racist, versus this person, they're being overtly racist.
Yeah, we had, it's interesting that you said that, right? You said first about the keyboard warriors. We seen that this week when the brother Jamal Green pulled up on Roland, and we know where that went. But I bet, and it's not about being violent or telling people to risk their freedom. It's that you're being dismissive to somebody who is in grassroots advocacy and activism in his hometown, not realizing where you were going. He pulled up, and you looked at stupid because you disrespected him instead of having discourse on differences.
Right.
And then I lost my train of thought. Like, thought about that, and I had to bring that in there. And then it's like, do you realize who you dealing with? Like for example, you get a lot of people, and this is what I'm gonna bring up, right? You get a lot of people who were directly affected by Biden's laws when he was in Senate.
Right.
The crime bill. So they always been, they did their time or whatever. They came home, got their life together. their life wasn't messed with. What I mean messed with, whatever they're doing now in life, their life wasn't messed with when Trump was in office.
Right.
So they may not even really be pro-Trump. They may not even want to vote for him. But it's like, then they hear the double talk when, during the George Floyd situation, when everybody was talking about defund police. And then what Biden said, no, we're not going to defund police. We're going to fund the police.
Right.
And then it's like, now you're dealing with her, knowing her history as a prosecutor. And it's like, oh no, I'm definitely not setting myself up for that again, even if I'm not a part of that life. So and then you're on the computer. So now you're like, you're dealing with a nutcase.
Right.
And I say nutcase as a phrase. I don't mean anybody that needs clinical help needs clinical, but you dealing with a dude that's not far, a dude or a female, that's not far removed from the streets, that's used to their conflict resolution was putting all types of hands and feet on you.
Right.
And you want to tell them, you want to shame them because they don't want to vote for her? So I find it interesting that people literally are trying to shame people for not wanting to go down that road. Like we discussed it before. A lot of women get upset. Why they ain't got no man? Why the man they dealing with ain't on his feet financially?
Right.
He from the street. He from the 90s.
Right.
He just getting back on his feet.
Exactly.
He ain't probably even got 20 years in his career because of certain decisions that he made. And we're not saying that the decisions that he made, he didn't have to do the time for and come home for. But people talk this reentry stuff that the bottom line is still on the application.
Right.
So when they display that, they start to get themselves politically educated, and you want to argue with somebody about who they choose to vote for, when at the end of the day, like we discussed, gas is high, food is high.
Right.
You can't even have lunch at work without spending $20.
Exactly. And when people's unmet needs are not being met, that's when you see onset of mental health illnesses that people don't realize. Because, people gonna be like, oh, why don't you just go get a better job? But you got to think, most people in the States, what does that look like for everybody? It looks different for all of us. And then also too, we all live in different parts of the region, and everyone may not be educated. And I'm not talking about in the sense of a worldly education, but, may come to getting degrees, because some of these jobs want you to have 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees that don't make sense, that they can do on the job training for. Yeah. So with our people, we suffer the most when it comes to mental health illnesses, because like I said, we don't have the resources. Those who do have the resources, they're like, I'm good. They think money's everything. Money is not everything, because if your mental health, your spiritual health, your financial health, and your physical health is out of whack, everything's out of whack. And people think like, I got money, I can just, do this, or I can pray it away. You can use your spirituality and still go seek some type of assistance. But if you're hungry, of course you're going to be like, oh man, I'm going to have generalized anxiety because where's my next meal going to come from? Yes, I'm depressed because I don't have I'm couch surfing and I don't have an address to apply for food stamps. You know what I'm saying? So
it was like when we did this show the other day on Pat Talk. The beginning of the show, we talked about the older woman that had got arrested for stealing 10,000 pounds of chicken. And we all know that, ain't nobody eating that much chicken. What was going on. And my thing is, streets got to eat. When you put people in tough situations, everybody don't have that skill to be able to not do certain things that would be detrimental, because they're living right now. Right now, I don't care what you're talking about. My light bill is getting cut off today.
Right.
I got to get this money. It's getting cut off at 4:00. I got a shut us notice. Matter of fact, they got to get in my basement, and I acted like I wasn't home for them to get in the basement. So when you put people in certain situations, and we're not condoning criminality, but you put people in certain situations, they're going to do certain things
right
as a reaction to what's going on.
Absolutely.
Did you get some of that chicken?
No, but I
Nah, it was in Illinois.
I know exactly. Yeah, exactly. But like you said, who knows what her condition was for her to say, "Hey, I'm going to get that chicken and I'm going to sell it." And I know I used to live in Chicago, so I know the state of Chicago, and I know how few and far between jobs can be. People be like, "Oh, it's like the third largest city," but it's also too one of them cities that's built on corruption. And the people at the top, of course, they're going to get off, but it's the rest of us, the 90% of us, of course, going to get locked up. And then that's another cost to taxpayers. Then when you get out, you got to pay restitution, right? How you going to do that if you can't get a job at basic places? So once again, with that mental health, illness.
I know one of the things that I find myself doing to not deal with social media, because sometimes I'd be needing a break. Like it'd be so much energy. And I was telling you yesterday how I was on my phone and I was looking at something on Facebook, and I was seeing I didn't watch that convention, and I knew everything about the convention because people were posting it. And one of the things that I do sometimes when I'm home, if I leave or go to the store, I'll leave my phone in the house. Or leave my phone in my truck and be like, I'm running in the store real quick, leave the phone in the truck. And I, because sometimes, you'll go to the store, you can make a list and still forget stuff. And you be like, damn, I done forgot what I came to the store for. Then you wind up, buying stuff you didn't need, but you wanted. And then you forgot why you went to the store. So that's one thing that I do. I detach myself from my phone, from social media. I may go 2-3 days without even looking. And, I'm a poster. So what I'll do is I'll do the shuttle post, the schedule post. So I'll shuttle a post, schedule, excuse my language. I keep saying shuttle because I'm thinking about something. I will schedule a post a day in advance. Like, so this drop. So people be like, oh, you posted. I was asleep. What are you talking about? So
right.
Yeah, and then having that break. So one of the things that you did, I know a couple years ago, for your mental wellness was your garden.
Right. And I love to garden. I got that from, like I said, one of my great uncles. So I used to spend my summers in Alabama. And so every year before we used to go back to Boston, we used to stop at my uncle's garden and pick greens, peas, all that. And I know how to chef butter beans and all that. So I got that country girl in me too. So I started a garden, and my family's like, what you know about gardening? And you from Boston. But I watched my great uncle over the years, and I said, okay, that's what he do. Okay, that's what he do. Then, of course, reading the great Dr. George Washington Carver, all the inventions he made, and just trial and error. And I mean, every year I grow my garden. I know what crops to, plant for the fall, for the summer. And, I'm one of those type of people. I want to not only just, look good, but I want to feel good. I want to live till like I'm 100 years old, to be honest with you. And I don't take medication. People my age like, oh, yes, I'm over 40 plus. And people like, oh, my back hurt. My knee hurt. I go to the gym 3-4 times a week. And when I'm in my garden, I don't have to think about, oh, what's going on social media. I don't care what y'all doing on social media. I'm out here trying to really just live my life and be at peace. And that's what people always tell you too when you are going through mental health issues. Plant a garden. A lot of people who live to like 90 plus years old, they have gardens. Like I watched people who live in the blue zones. That's like the older people who's like 90 plus. All of them have gardens. You didn't see them on social media. You didn't see them on, watching TV, vegetating in front of a TV. They was outside. And anytime you go to a therapist, they're going to ask you, well, what do you do for a hobby? And they're going to tell you to get out in nature, to garden, to limit your social media, limit your TV, because those things, they do the process. Then you got the blue screen that's, really damaging our eyesight. We sedentary more. So, I make sure I do things to move my body, movement, exercise. That also helps reduce your mental health symptoms and signs as well. But, people can read all that and still be out here fighting, with the avatar. So garden or get you a house plant or something. I got like 40 house plants. And that's my thing.
That was one of the things that I was looking forward to it moving, because I had a cat. I had the first cat that died, and that actually bothered me when that first cat died more than I expected. So the second cat, I never bonded with that cat. So when I moved, I gave the cat to my neighbor actually, because I didn't want to take it. I didn't want to take it to the new house.
Right.
I just didn't want to. Everybody was like, "Well, can you take it there?" Yeah, I could take it wherever I want to go, but he's not coming. He didn't come. So I said, okay, set up my office, be able to do things, because I'm always, on the computer or watching TV or whatever, or just on the computer doing something. And I had noticed a couple of days ago, like, yo, I moved like in July. Yeah, I think July, the beginning of July. I said, I got like 8-9 boxes that's still boxed up. So I ain't even comfortable yet. And I'm like, okay. So I had noticed, I went to the doctor and she was like, you lost some weight. And I was like, good, because that was the process. And she was like, well, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm not doing nothing special. Mm-hmm. And Drea, we've known each other for some years. And one of the things that most people didn't know is when I used to do a lot of shows at night, I would always be drinking water, and I would always have this blue cup in my hand. The blue cup was always coffee. I don't drink alcohol. Mm-hmm. I stopped drinking coffee at night.
Yes.
I just stopped drinking it. I just like, I ain't gonna drink. So that was one of the things that, it was a lifestyle change that wound up having benefit from it. And I was just like, oh, I got to do, when I do a show, I got to drink the coffee, be having stuff going on. It helps me focus. Plus, I'll be tired. Mm-hmm. And it's like, now with moving and finally get situated, I'm starting to really, really understand having that mental wellness. I grew up with having a front porch. Mm-hmm. I have a front porch now. So sometimes I'll go out there. The other day I was out there, it was pouring down raining. I wasn't getting wet, but it was one of them days. It was cold. It was cool, rainy. I was getting me a nice, enjoying the peace that we all say we want peace, but sometimes you have to create the peace that you want.
Absolutely.
So right. And I was enjoying the peace.
And a lot of times we always post like, oh, I'm protecting my peace. No, you're not. Because the next post, you over here arguing with somebody, you talking about you blocking these people. You really have to protect your peace in this time. And your home should be your peace. Like, I'm sorry. Home should be your peace. That should be a place that should be tranquil. You can burn your candles. It should be clean. It should be, full of your vibes and good vibes. And I know some people be talking about toxic positivity, but I'd rather have toxic positivity than this negativity that's going on in the world, because it does cripple your mental health. I don't care what anybody said. For instance, earlier this year, like my mental health was crippling because of just all the stuff that was going on. And then I found myself having anxiety. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? Because I had stress at my job. And I made a big decision of quitting my job and taking a career sabbatical because of the toxicity I was dealing with in higher education. And I also took a social media break at that time. And so many times as I have to go back, because I'm a woman, going back to a Black woman, it's like, people on social media try to tell you how to look, how to be, whatever. You should know what your true essence is. If you don't, you got to go back. You got to go within. Peace starts within. I could put on all the dope outfits and makeup. I'm masking my true pain. And so when you see a lot of people who go through all these surgeries, when I'm talking about BBLs and all that, they're not at peace with themselves and what they look like. So they got to go and do this masking and do mascara therapy, and not knowing that you're still dealing with depression. You're still dealing with anxiety. You may have bipolar. You may have schizophrenia. You may have ADHD. And a lot of times going back to, if you can afford that cosmetic surgery, you can afford to go to therapy. You can afford to start a garden. You can go to narrative therapy. You can go to group therapy, get group support. But a lot of people turn that unhealed, unresolved issue, and they become bitter people. And it's a lot of bitter people, especially women, Black women in the world, because we don't want to take accountability and say it's something off with me. I've been sad for 2 years. Maybe I have dysthymia, which is a lower grade of depression, and it lasts for 2 years. Maybe because I didn't take a look at myself in the mirror and say, you are the problem instead of the solution. And I'm talking about accountability a lot because we don't take accountability as people. We don't listen. And sometimes as Black women, we're like, I can save anybody. I don't know who told us that we can save anybody. We're not the Most High. We're not the Almighty. And we can barely save ourselves. But we want to save other people. We want to present like, oh, we're so strong and I'm Superwoman. You're not. You're still a human being. And you need to take accountability for the destruction you have caused in your life and the lives of others. And as women, we need to do a better job doing that.
Yes, Sister Stardy. The cat, that was my rider, but I had to get rid of him. I just didn't want to take on having to clean up behind the cat anymore, having to maintain the cat anymore. I did it for 8 years, and when the first cat passed away, it was bothersome because I was very attached to that cat. The cat actually used to jump on me. The cat was, act like a dog. It's sort of said he was very friendly, and then that cat died, and then the other cat wasn't the same. But anyway, yes, it's a start. I grew up in a home. I'm one of 5, but it was one of 4 in the home, and I had cousins. We were all close. So us all getting older and being grown, as we say, we all live separate places. And where I live at now, you got to drive. Mm-hmm. It's going to take you about an hour, 15 minutes from where I grew up at in Jersey to get to me. Right. And most people don't want to do the drive.
No, they don't.
So, they're more than welcome to come see me. I used to go to Jersey all the time. Probably start going back at least 2 or 3 times a month, but I created the peace that I live.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I try to really, like, the park that I used to walk to actually is around the corner from my house now. Like I used to look at the houses that's close to me when I'll be walking the park, because one day I'm gonna take some pictures for people in the chat and people that's supporters of the channel. The view I got on this across this river is just crazy. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, but yeah, Drea. Like other than that, like what I wanted to show you, right? Hold on, here it goes. Let's talk about this. Can you read that?
I can read it. That's why I was touching on dysthymia. So that's, like I said, that's a low grade depression. Then you have major depression, which is like, chronic, something like it talks about here. 1 in 3, it says Black adults with mental illness receive treatment, which is true. And women of color make up less than 5% of psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. I'm a trained social worker, so I've been a clinical social worker for 18 years. And that's true. Social workers are 80% white women. All right. And we can have a second part to this. But when it comes to this, I see a lot of depressed Black women. And I don't care if people are like, oh, it's low grade depression. Depression is depression to me because it presents differently. You may see, when I said the bitter Black women, I'm talking about you're angry, you're irritable. And I remember one of my colleagues said depression is inward anger. And then you see people who just blow up on people. So like it says here, feeling out of control. What do people do when they feel out of control? They blow up on folks, difficulty concentrating. And that can present as, you may think you have ADHD and you may have been misdiagnosed with ADHD, but you may have depression, right? The appetite, mood swings. When I feel this way, I either take a nap or I go to the gym. And I'm getting my natural endorphins when I go to the gym and when I go for a walk. And you see a lot of mood swings, and I'm like, oh, they're going through a depression. And I try not to diagnose people, and it's very hard for me as a clinical social worker. On the academia side, I teach mental health assessments class. So when I see a lot of disorders in our people, I'm like, oh, they need to, go seek,
Sister Star has a question, Drea,
therapy.
and this you'll be able to answer this question. How is the relationship with their mothers?
I love that, Sister Star. And a lot of times their relationships with their mom is toxic and broken. And they can't have an open conversation with their mothers. For instance, me and my mom, we tight. Like I live right around the corner from my mom. I hang with my mom more than probably some of my homegirls because my mom and I established that relationship when I was in her womb. And a lot of, mother and daughter relationships are very toxic. And then too, they see their mom battling depression. And then the daughter may say, well, I'm not going to be that type of woman. But they end up being, we end up eventually becoming our mothers.
You know what they say? I ain't my ancestors.
Right. I am my ancestor, but you do end up eventually, some people are cowards, but you end up eventually mimicking what you see, right? In the household that you grew up in, whether that's even with a foster parent or adoptive parent, right? So a lot of women, we deal with depression. I remember Michelle Obama said, I dealt with low-grade depression. No, sis, you dealt with depression. Some people have to be medicated. Depression can be treatable, but once again, it's taking accountability and saying, hey, I need treatment and I may need to go a step further. I may need to get on medication or I may need to change my lifestyle because it is treatable. There's some mental health illnesses.
So let me ask you, Dre. We sometimes are always on the same page, and I don't recall any instance that me and you haven't been on the same page. You'll see my behavior and you'll be like, oh, they must be driving you crazy, whatever, right? You mentioned something that I think that we need to really address, and I always say that we have to be able to be so uncomfortable in the conversation because this uncomfortability will allow to grow. It'll really, really bring out the growth. Because if the conversation is just surface based, you don't really grow because you gotta, as they say, you got a putty gut. What's putty? You gotta pull it out, let the air hit it, and then it'll harden up. When you say women don't want to be accountable, as a man, right? Most men are really, really trying to hold themselves accountable. If they're in a relationship, they're trying to hold the woman they're dealing with accountability. And it's like now we're in that era where it's, you can't say, you know what they say, you can't say nothing to a black woman. How do you feel about that? Like, coming from a person that wasn't raised that type of way, and you don't move that type of way as an adult, how do you feel that way when you hear that and you see it?
I have a big problem with black women not being accountable. I have lost friendships over holding my friends accountable. I have people hold me accountable all the time, and I have to look in the mirror. We think no one can tell us anything. Like, and then we have this shield of, I got 10 degrees. They can't tell me nothing because I'm educated and I make my own money. Okay, I do too. But someone needs to sit your behind down and hold you accountable. That's not the end all be all because you have education, you have money. There's some foul things you probably have did to people, and there's some foul things people did to you. And there's a lot of hurt and resentment, and then sweep it underneath the rug. And thank you, Sister Sarah, because I was going to go there too. A lot of people are emotionally stunted because someone, is like the yes queen, yes sis. I'm not going to let you to be co-signing your BS. I don't co-sign BS. So people, that's why I don't have that many homegirls, and the homegirls that I do have, I'm gonna hold them accountable. Like, even though I have friends that's married and they're like, oh, my husband get on my nerves. I don't ever tell my homegirls, you need to leave him. I'm like, you need to sit here. I know, and I'm like, I know you. You probably said something that you said and you didn't want to be held accountable, right? So I don't ever tell my friends leave your husband unless it's something major like you getting abused, and adultery. But I don't even get into people's business like that. But a lot of people are emotionally immature, especially Black women. And then we don't get the help. Because even when I took my notes for tonight, we always talk about, oh, yeah, soft girl era. But you got to go through some healing to go to soft girl era. Because you got soft girl era and you want luxury and you working hard. And a lot of times we throw ourselves to working hard because we want to deem like, oh, I'm this independent woman. No one can tell me what to do. And at the same time, we don't get assistance with our mental health. And a lot of times that's a cry for help. Like, sis, you need to go get therapy. And we can have all the benefits, can have a employee assistance program and still won't get help. And there's so many therapists that's out there to help us, but we don't want to go and lay our burdens down at a therapist. Because you know what the therapist is going to do? They're going to hold you behind accountable. And it's going to be like, oh. And that's why people quit when it comes to like the second or third session, because the therapist is going to give you homework and they ain't trying to, if you have an effective therapist, my therapist was effective. She will hold me accountable and be like, no, you said you're going to quit that job this day and you're going to quit it. And people will be like, oh no, she's trying to, hold me accountable. You need people to hold you accountable. That's how you grow. That's how you evolve. That's how you become a better person. I come from going back to my mom, like my parents. My mom still hold me accountable to this day. I think I had something on today, and my mom was like, you don't got no slip on underneath that dress? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, dang, you're right. I don't have a slip on. And I'm 41, and she still hold me accountable. I could have got mad and I'm like, oh, how dare you say that? So I come from that type of lineage in which my mom hold me accountable, and all the women in my family, the elder women, they straight up and down Black women. I like to say strong Black women that hold not only myself but my cousins accountable to like, hey, this is what womanhood looks like, and it's your choice whether or not you want to go down that path. But we don't want to hear it because we think we know it and we think we have arrived to this destination of, I don't know what the destination is, but a lot of Black women do not want to be held accountable, and we don't want to seek help because we feel like we the fixers and we can fix other people. You can't fix nobody but yourself, and we do a poor job at that.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah.
Damn slip.
And yes, it's a sign that slip. I was like, oh Lord, because I grew up wearing slips, like,
Yeah, me and Keisha had that conversation about girdles. Like nowadays, we don't see a lot of these younger females wearing girdles.
Right.
And yeah, because Drea, that has been one of the biggest things that I noticed when with certain conversations, that when you try to address the men versus women issue, and it always gets deflected. You could make a post, or you could make a statement, or you could do a show, and you could, for the people that got big audiences, you could be at a show doing a show, and the show could be directed. I know when I first would join the show with Pat Talk, we'll do a show and it's directed directly to women. Mm-hmm. And sometimes some women will get triggered and be like, well, what about the men? We're not doing a show on the men right now.
Right.
Stay focused. And it's like you dealing with and it's crazy because you supporting women, you love them, you're gonna protect them, you're gonna provide, you're gonna show women that you're down with them. But it's like, why I gotta go through all the minutia for you to allow me to show you I'm down with you, but you don't want to take my lead, sort of say.
Mm-hmm. But then they come back that way. You're not a good leader. I'm not going to. Yeah. You're not a good leader neither. The best leaders I ever had in my life were men, from basketball coaches, from men that I work, side by side with, best leaders, because I don't like working for women because they're going to get emotional and they're going to nitpick everything. And so many times we have to take the emotions out of it. Yes, we all have emotions, male, women. But at the same time, too, sometimes we got to take a step back, like, well, maybe this is not a good time for me to speak. I just probably need to observe and listen. And also, too, taking accountability, it stings. And I always say, it stings.
I seen somebody and they was like, because I'm one of the people, and I never look at trolls, but I look at comments just to get an idea of you always want to know who your target audience, how they view what's being presented. And it's like most women nowadays think, oh, you just want to lord over me. And I'm looking at the statement like, what is she talking about? What does that have to do with anything? Sister Star said, because many of them just want to hear good things about their bad habits.
Absolutely. And they want to be enabled. And I'm not here to enable bad behavior. And then too, a lot of that is people don't want to break the cycle of bad habits. And I notice a lot of these people who don't take accountability, go see what their relationships like with their dads, and also too with just men in their family. Because once again, I always say, like, my family are equal opportunities. All of us got the business. I'm talking about me and my first cousins, my siblings. It wasn't like, oh, well, you're a female, I'm gonna give it to you softer. Delivery is delivery, and sometimes you need to hear it raw, and sometimes you need to hear it unfiltered. And you, like I said, it's going to sting, but it's a protection. And I think people forget accountability is a protection for you to not continue to go down a path that you're going down. Because now, people say, oh, you made a mistake, but then the second, third, fourth, fifth time, now you're creating this cycle, you're creating this pattern, and now it's becoming a pathology, which is becoming a disease. And now you're going to have to really unlearn that. And people don't want to unlearn. People want to take shortcuts. They do not want to really dig deep to the beyond the surface level and say, this is the root issue. They want to put the mascara. I'll get a BBL. I'll put my makeup on. I'll invest in that, but I won't invest in my mental health though.
You on them about them BBLs, huh?
I'm sick of it. Just like Asian, naturally, or going to the gym, you're not going to get quick results. But when you're consistent and you're disciplined, and people lack discipline and self-control too.
It's funny. Years ago, I'm talking about almost 20 years ago, right? About a little over 20 years ago, I used to have this thing, right? Where I used to always tell my cousin, every nationality, ethnicity, they got characteristics, physical characteristics. And I used to be like, yo, I don't care what nobody say, a black woman gonna have some butt. So I say that to say, like, now we're in the era of the BBL. And when me and my cousin, when we chop it up, I'll be like, do they understand that black men don't like that stuff? Like, you got what you got. Like, you got enough to satisfy the person that's looking at you, because a black woman is going to have certain physical characteristics with her, whether it might be flat. I'm just using this for an example, you guys, folks. I'm not trying to have an over sexualized show, but whether it's flat, big, super big, small, real big, most black women is going to have enough that the man that's in her life is really going to appreciate her physical attributes.
Right, exactly. And the reason why I keep mentioning cosmetic surgery is because
yes, it's a star. It is to stun on other women.
It is to stun on other women. And if you don't have to get it, if it's not a life or death procedure, then why are you getting it? And then it goes to the psyche. What is going on up here and in here for you to get these enhancements and risk your life? You gotta have you gotta be, and I don't like to say off, but you have to be undiagnosed with something in order for you to risk your life when you don't have to. Like, I know when I got, a surgery, I had to get it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get put underneath the knife and get put to sleep. But it was necessary for me to be more healthier. But these people are just willing to do it instead of saying, hey, let me check myself. Let me check who I am as a person. Do I need that? Am I psychologically okay? Am I invested in my holistic health? And people they want to take shortcuts. That's why people don't want to take accountability, because they don't want to feel pain. In order for you to grow mentally and holistically, you're going to have to feel some pain, and you're going to have to, you're going to have to break through and mature. And so many people are not mature. These are grown people and grown bodies, and they mentally teenagers because that was their peak, I guess.
Yeah. So let me ask you. I got one last question for you. We've discussed this in nauseam before. How does a person now? A person is trying to get some. They may not go to therapy, but they may go to like self-help groups, right? And they're just able to work on their mental wellness. As a clinician, right? How would they, as the person that's really just trying, like, yo, I know I need some help, having these little breakdowns, these mental outbursts at my husband or my wife, and the job, my kids. How do you decide? Well, how are you able to know the difference to go into a group and getting the real work, or you could go to a group and it'd be a trauma bonding session?
Right.
What would you advise somebody to look for? What's the signs?
So the signs, well, are you talking about what group?
Yeah, how would they be able to know whether they're going to the group that's going to get help or whether it's just a trauma bonding session?
That's y'all holding each other accountable. And that goes from the facilitator. That facilitator has to also to be invested, because as a facilitator, you got to know how to pull things out of people. And then when you start seeing your symptoms lessen, let's say you was going to the group, you was crying at every session. Now you got group 3 and you're like, oh, okay, I'm good. And I'm listening, I'm reflecting on what the facilitator said and even my group members. And you should only have 8 to 10 people in your group. Trauma bonding. Oh yeah, me too. Oh, let me get your number. We kicking it after this. Because there's no boundary. What are y'all working on? Because y'all may be trauma bonding and say, oh, well, my coping mechanism is to go to happy hour after this.
Mm-hmm.
And you wasn't drinking before, right? So you have to really pay attention. And also, is that person a licensed clinician that's running the group? What have they been through as well? And they'll self-disclose, whether or not any positive and healthy group facilitator, they're gonna ask those hard questions. They're gonna hold you accountable. And when you start seeing people drop off from that group, you're in a good group because you weeding out people.
Social media that made everybody clinician. Listen, it's Demore now, so it's Demore.
Yeah.
Before it was everybody's narcissistic, you toxic.
Now it's Demore. And for those who looking to go to therapy, this is another big thing too. Because there's a lot of therapists who's crazy. Ask your therapist, have they seek the therapist? And if you're like, no, I got it all, you need to run. You need to ask specific questions. This don't go into therapy. Are they licensed? What type of medication? What type of of course, insurance that they take? Have they sought a therapist before? Have they worked through their trauma? Are they always projecting onto you and taking over the conversation? Because the therapy session is about you. They will throw out a question and, gauge how you feeling. And you should just go ahead and just unpack. It's not about them. So I think a lot of times people don't know what to look for when it comes to therapists. Also, too, are your therapists, they coming on to you as a conflict of interest. Your homegirl should not be a therapist. And no one in your family or your friends should be your therapist, because that's conflict of interest. People can lose their license. And if they are having conflict of interest as far as trying to have a sexual relationship with you, because I'm seeing that a lot on Instagram, and I have friends like, is this appropriate? I'm like, no, you need to get their license suspended. So a good therapist will have their own therapist as well, because once again, when I was a practicing clinician, I had my own therapist, because I'm dealing with my own personal issues, secondary trauma, compassion fatigue. I'm just sick of seeing these people, and I'm getting trapped in my own emotions as well. But like you said, everyone on social media is a therapist. They're a political scientist. They're a lawyer. They're a policy maker, and people need to stay in their lane and let the professionals handle that.
Yeah. So just for everybody in the chat, this particular show is dedicated to our brother who passed away a couple weeks ago, Dr. Rick Wallace. He did a lot of work on YouTube. If you know who Rick Wallace was, if you don't know who he was, just YouTube. Go to his name. Did a lot of work, a lot of clinical work. I think he really cared about Black people. I think he really cared about the Black nuclear family. And he was somebody that was trying to come up with solutions and ways to put us as Black individuals and as a Black family in a better situation. So, condolences to his immediate family. And, really, sometimes we need to give people their flowers while they're here. Instead of, now his videos will probably start going viral and be like, oh, who's this dude? And then everybody got to tell that person or people, well, he passed away, but he really put a lot of work in these streets. Mm-hmm. And, just wanted to give him a shout out during the show and let him know that this particular show is dedicated to the work that the brother put in. Well, Sister Drea, give us some final words.
So my final words is it's okay to seek help and, start with one layer at a time, to get to that root issue. Just don't go to therapy and waste your time and waste the therapist's time as well. And some people, they're not meant for you to know that you're going to therapy because it's still a taboo topic in our community. People think, oh, white people, they go to therapy. Nah, Black folks go to therapy too. You just have to be honest. And then, if you cannot afford it, there's so many different resources out there. And I just want us to be better as people, to hold one another accountable, because we're in this thing together. As one of my favorite Cheryl's Fannie Lou Hamer said, it's like, I don't care if you're from no house or more house, we in this thing together. And so many times we forget that, some of us have felt like we have arrived. Like I said, I don't know where this destination of arrival is at, but we need one another and we need to stop beefing because it's just the tool of the enemy to continuously to divide us. And, we all have some type of, undiagnosed mental health. And it's okay if you, are not feeling okay. It's okay to get help. And it doesn't always have to be traditional therapy. Sometimes we have to write it out. We have to do storytelling. It's okay if you got to get medication as well. But, make sure that you go to a person who's licensed, they're seasoned. Don't go to these TikTok therapists. And then they're going to be telling you case notes online and breaking all type of HIPAA violation. Okay. So make sure that they are legit.
With that, appreciate everybody in the chat. You remember the best way to support the channel is to like, share, subscribe. Thank you for your continuous support, and we'll see you guys soon.